I find it pretty ironic how the right wing and even progressives, i.e. Democrats, basically of Jewish descent or so-called Jewish descent, if you want to actually call it for what it is, can be so upset about President Obama deciding to abstain from killing the resolution in the UN regarding the settlements that Israel is proposing to create in various areas that actually don't belong to them. In particular, I'm talking about settlements that they have approved for Gaza, which actually does not belong to them. Gaza actually belongs to Egypt, if you really want to go along legal lines. And the portion of East Jerusalem, well, actually all of East Jerusalem, which is not actually just a city, but it's a geographic area, which prior to 1967 was considered Palestine and the Palestinian homeland. But after the 1967 war, which Egypt won, they grabbed that area and Gaza and actually never gave it back. The United States has been on the wrong side of various issues when it comes to people's rights and the rights of countries to govern themselves. Now, if you're unaware of it, there was a recent vote in the UN to basically denounce Israel's expansion and building of settlements in East Jerusalem and in Gaza. Now, when you hear the word settlement, in most people's minds, that's, you know, some houses, you know, basically some small towns, etc. But the way that Egypt does it, the way that Israel does it, they go in and not only build towns, but they build out infrastructure, okay? And at the present time, they are in the process of building about 60,000 settlements, 60,000 towns throughout Gaza, throughout the eastern Jerusalem area, and there was a third area, I forget which it is, but there's a third area as well. And it's been denounced by the UN, which is not a change, okay? The Israeli settlement problem has been denounced for the past 60 years by damn near every president since and even before Reagan. I think it started with Johnson, to be honest with you. Now, Israel is acting like a spoiled child, and they are now going to not cut off completely relations, but severely restrict relations with at least 10 of the, I believe it's 15 members of the United Nations Security Council. Now, there was a vote by the Security Council, and the vote was 14-0 with one abstention, which was the United States. And true, the United States could have stopped the whole thing by just vetoing the resolution, but the United States has had a policy, as I stated, since Johnson, of not supporting Israel building settlements in the disputed territories. And honestly, they're not disputed. Israel just grabbed them and won't give them back. Now, in case you weren't aware of the makeup of the UN Security Council, it's made up of 5 permanent members, which are China, France, Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Those are the 5 permanent members. And then there are 10 non-permanent members that are elected to 2-year terms by the General Assembly. Those nations are Angola, Egypt, Japan, Malaysia, New Zealand, Senegal, Spain, Ukraine, Uruguay, and Venezuela. Everybody except the United States voted to denounce the settlements. So Israel got pissed off. They decided to curtail their ties with 10 of the 15 members. Surprisingly, they didn't decide to curtail their relationship with the United States. They only chose to attack President Obama. Now, the 10 countries that they decided that they were going to curtail their relations with are, I believe, more than likely, hang on a second, let me see if I can get the exact names. Okay, here we go. The countries that they are going to restrict their relations, i.e. Not allow their diplomats to travel into the countries, etc., are Britain, France, Russia, China, Japan, the Ukraine, Angola, Egypt, Uruguay, and Spain. Again, surprisingly, the United States, which could have nixed the whole thing, isn't on that list. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu is acting like a spoiled child, and he's being supported by, the president-elect Donald Trump, who we all know is a spoiled child. Funny thing about it, if we go back into history, we don't have to go back all that far. We merely need to go back to South Africa, 1962. The UN at that time issued sanctions against South Africa, and there were only 2 countries that didn't vote in favor of the sanctions. At that time, there were 15 members, as there are today, of the Security Council, and the vote was 13-0 in order to impose sanctions on South Africa because of apartheid. Only 2 countries abstained. You wouldn't be surprised to know that the United States was one of those countries and Great Britain was the other. So in that particular case, if we look back on history from where we are today to where we were back then, the United States was on the wrong side of that issue. And now, because the United States is on the right side of the issue of the Israeli settlements and a 2-state solution for Israel and Palestine, you have Israel jumping up and down about the whole thing. Now, Donald Trump has stated his public support of Israel, and he has nominated an ambassador for Israel who does not believe in the 2-state solution. He believes that Israel is entitled to all of the land that they won, glommed, or stole during the 6-Day War, and that the Palestinians need to like it or lump it. That reminds me of a similar situation where Ronald Reagan, when the vote to apply sanctions to South Africa occurred, instructed his UN ambassador to abstain. And he also probably put the word out to Great Britain that he wanted them to go along with him. The funny thing about it was, he was working against the will of the people. And Congress decided that they were going to issue their own denouncement. So they passed a resolution in Congress denouncing South Africa. Well, Ronald Reagan, just like Donald Trump, decided that he wasn't going to go along with it. Now, since Reagan was the president at the time, he decided to veto the resolution. Unfortunately for him, Congress had enough votes in order to override his veto, so that we did in fact issue sanctions along with the rest of the world against South Africa. Now, I'm wondering what's going to happen now, since instead of this being South Africa, it's Israel, and what Donald Trump is going to do once he gets in. And again, I really shouldn't have to wonder, because he's already told us that things are going to be different once he gets there. So this is just another example of the United States not doing the right thing when you're talking about Donald Trump, excuse me, and being on the wrong side of history. It does no one any good, both morally and just plain out, straight out doing the right thing, to side with somebody when they're wrong. And in this particular case, Israel is wrong. But to Donald Trump, that doesn't mean anything. Blind loyalty in the face of right and wrong is an affront both to the people of this country and the people of the world. And as I stated earlier, Benjamin Netanyahu is on the wrong side of this. This man is not looking for peace. This man is a right-winger, has the support of the right-wingers in the Israeli government, and to our eternal shame, has the support of both the right-wingers in this country and the Democrats, certain Democrats, which on every other issue are on the left, except when it comes to Israel. Now, as I had stated previously, and I'm going to try to point out the areas, this area right here, that's the Gaza Strip, and that actually belonged to Egypt. This is Egypt down here. There's Cairo. Okay. Here is Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem. Okay. But this area out here, that was the area that the Palestinians claimed, and that the UN prior to '67 had designated as land that actually belonged to the Palestinians, that Israel just took. Okay. There have been over 60 resolutions put forth by the UN Security Council. And every single president, and I do mean every single one, from Johnson all the way through to Obama, has publicly stated their position that there should be a two-nation settlement, a two-nation agreement on the land that belongs to Israel and the land that belongs to the Palestinians. This is the first time that Obama has actually taken an action, or some of you will say an inaction, in support of that two-nation solution. But for some reason, because he's leaving office, everybody and their brother is taking pot shots at President Obama for doing the right thing. Hopefully, sooner or later, history will judge, and I believe that history will judge him right, as it will judge all of the previous presidents right in supporting a two-nation solution to solve the problem as far as Israel's concerned. Now, don't get me wrong, Israel does need its own assurances of security and not being attacked from the area, and there's a whole lot of stuff that's got to be worked out there. But all along this area, as you can see all along here, Israel has got a 600-mile wall to prevent people from crossing over out of that area and into Israel. So they do have some security on that wall. It probably can and should be beefed up. But once that is accomplished, they need to do the right thing and give the people back their lands. The only thing that is going to occur now with Israel allowing additional settlements both there and on the other side in Gaza. And funny thing about Egypt, they're not even jumping up and down about that portion all that much. But the only thing that's going to be accomplished is it's going to be more difficult for a settlement to be reached.